All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. So we'll get right into it. Today we are talking about vision to victory. So it's not only sufficient to have a vision, but how do you drive it to victory in the middle of challenges and underrepresentation, for lack of a better word. My name is Buwa. I'm a former Wall Street executive, but today I am a Chief Product and Operations Officer for technology businesses. I help with digital innovation, building teams, and automating operations. I've had 3-decade career on Wall Street. I've helped investment banks, financial institutions drive through global transformation. But what has always lagged is a role model who looked like me. So today we'll talk about that with our esteemed panelists and see what we can do for the next generation of women. So I'll start with introducing our panel. Please meet Shermalyn John, founder, brand strategist, influential boss lady. Dr. Pamela Cipriano, president, the practice of health and wellness. Esther Graham, CEO, Festa Eladona. Cheryl Nilankawil, CEO, Medical Solutions Consultants. And last but not the least, Jasmine Nelson, CEO of Umber by J. Lene. All our panelists have built organizations, have led organizations, have broken barriers, and created impact. We'll go through their journey, the challenges they have faced in their own industries and their lives. And we'll also talk about strategies, what has made them move from vision to victory in their leadership. So I'll start with our first questioning to Shermalyn. In 30 seconds, tell us how you are changing the game in your industry. Plus also, please introduce yourself in more detail.
Hi everyone, so my name is Shermalyn from beautiful St. Lucia. And I'm going to start off by saying that in a world where 74% of professionals believe that as leaders, we are not authentic, it is time to change how we continue to lead so future leaders can continue to see themselves in us. Now that's where I step in. I partner with amazing women in leadership as well as corporations to build influence, trust, and authority strategically. And this is very important. People want to make real connections with leaders. The world is changing. Leadership has evolved to something that is more personal. And as a result, it is our responsibilities as leaders, if we want to contribute towards future-proofing leadership pipelines, they need to see themselves in us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pamela, please introduce yourself in detail and tell us how you're changing the game in your industry.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Pamela Cipriano. I am the founder and president of the Practice of Health and Wellness, and I'm the CEO of IV Hydration Lounge and Med Spa. I was the first nurse practitioner in the state of Connecticut to open a solo practice, which was beyond difficult. So I had done my research, and 119 other nurse practitioners were practicing independently. So I felt if they could do it, I could do it. What I didn't know was that it was only on paper. They never actually did it. So you have to submit something to the government to let them know that you plan on practicing independently, and they did do that, but they never actually opened up a practice. And so Connecticut, which is part of Connecticut, in the insurance industry, would not credential me because they were never forced to update their bylaws. The law was passed in 2014 that nurse practitioners can work independently, and it wasn't until 2016 that I opened my practice. So I had to hire an attorney and pretty much fight City Hall. Since then, I made a ton of blunders when I first opened my practice, and I opened my doors to other aspiring nurse practitioners who wanted to be business owners so they could learn my mistakes so they didn't have to go through the same heartache that I did.
Thank you. Esther.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Esther Graham, and I am the founder and CEO of Festa Della Donna. And if you're asking what does that mean, that really means in Italian, International Women's Day. And why did I name my company that? I lived in Italy for quite a while, and one of the things I really enjoyed was how the Italian women celebrated each other on International Women's Day, which is always on March 8th. And I said, you know what? I just like the name. I think that women don't celebrate each other enough. And so I named my company that. It's a training and development company. I'm also an educator, and I have multiple early childhood centers. I am a TEDx speaker. I'm a neurotransformational coach. And I work a lot with C-suite women. I'm very focused on how can I help you be successful, not just in business as a leader, but also in your personal life. Because many times as women, we negate one to promote the other. You know, we're gonna focus on our career. I know this because that's what I did, and I neglected myself. So my focus is very much how can we put personal development into your business development and really take you from one level to the next level. In other words, how can you be that whole woman and be successful in every area of your life? And primarily, that's what I do.
Thank you. Cheryl, please.
I'm Dr. Nilan Kavil. I am the founder and CEO of Medical Solutions. We are a long-term care physician practice which advocates for AI in healthcare, and we bring in AI enhancements and technology into long-term care, which is our senior care. We are also promoting the traditional care delivery methods. Instead of the SNFs and your mom and dad going into ALFs, we're trying to have hospital at home. How can we prevent readmissions? We don't manage nowadays as, you know, the chronic care side is not managed properly because of the cost of healthcare, and the services right now are still 1965 model, you know, and the Medicare is still stuck there. So we're trying to deliver care at the bedside of the patient using technology. So,
Thank you. Jasmine.
Hello, Hello, my name is Jasmine Nelson. I am the CEO and founder of Umber by J. Lene. What we do is we provide an all-natural solution to help women reduce excessive facial hair naturally. I developed a product, a hair inhibitor, of course, like I said, all natural, to pretty much accommodate those who are underserved, that have PCOS, menopause, any kind of hormonal imbalance. So I created this product, or my product line, due to my own situation, having PCOS hirsutism, and I have to tell y'all it was created on accident. But it was a blessing because now I am the face of a woman of color in the e-commerce space, because if you look in stores, you do not see a woman of color on any of these type of hair removal products. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. And from my end, coming from the corporate and the VC and the Wall Street sector, one thing I want to highlight is all funding is very less when it comes to women. It's only less than 1%. And especially for women of color, it's a fraction of 1%. And the change has not happened even after the pandemic, which we expected due to other systemic challenges. And how can we get this 1% even to 50%? We are not asking for 60, 70, 100, 200. And that's what I want to talk about also more today with our panelists. So just to continue some of the questions, all our leaders are coming from corporate, nonprofit, sustainability, startup, other ecosystems. But having vision alone is not sufficient. So we want to talk about their strategy. How did they build resilience? And more importantly, how did they take action? So I'll start with Shermalyn. What role does strong personal and corporate branding play in women's leadership success? What's your point of view?
Personal branding has to be a critical component of any career strategy right now. At this point in time, I'm very sure that we've all built strategies for our organizations or for our teams. But have we become intentional about building our personal brands as a catalyst to our career? Reason why it is important right now, if we don't advocate for ourselves, if we don't understand the value that we bring to different rooms, how do we expect people to advocate for ourselves? Let's have a discussion about the conversations that happen when we're not in a room. Yeah. A conversation to get hired, a conversation to get fired, a conversation to get promoted. Like me, a couple of years ago, a conversation to get laid off after being praised for successfully implementing a project around the region. These are conversations that we have no control over, that we're not in the room. But with your personal brand, you could strategically, intentionally, and professionally influence those conversations. And in this day and age, we need to shift that narrative, because everybody in here has a personal brand, right? But the thing is that as women, we've been taught that personal branding is about being bragging, it's about being arrogant, but I want to shift that narrative. Personal branding or visibility is not vanity. We need to shape it to something that is valuable, right? Valuable in the sense that we position ourselves as a strategic asset to the organizations that we lead. So very important, Cheryl, right? We no longer could do it in silos. How could myself as a leader continue to add value to the organization that I lead? Let me tie it to a strategic goal. As a personal brand and as a leader, am I going to position myself in a way that I'm going to attract the best talent on my team? Am I going to position myself in a way that I attract the most lucrative partnerships that drive revenue within the organization? So there has to be intentionality behind it. And the truth of the matter is, when you look at research done by organizations like Gartner, etc., the future of leadership is at risk. And women leaders, if you look at the industry stats right now, we only occupy about 10% of C-suite roles within Fortune 500 companies. But how is another woman, or even a black woman, going to aspire towards becoming a leader if she cannot see herself in you, or even a man for that perspective, or a role model?
Yeah.
So coming from a small island, I had to strategically reposition myself. That was the first pillar, right? I had to package my years of experience, understand with my 15-year career as a global brand strategist and marketing, what it is I need to take out to position me in a way that solves a problem for the organizations that I want to attract to do leadership training with, or the C-suite executives that I want to work with, right? That was the second pillar. And the third one, how do I promote with intention? How do I curate a network, right, that I could benefit from, but they could also benefit from me? Three strategic pillars, and I had to do that shift. And I could tell you, I am from a 238 square mile island called St. Lucia that I'm very proud of. But I'm here today sharing my insights with you and the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherlyn. And then, like you said, at the entry level, we have a lot of representation, but then as we go into C-suite in different industries, it's either 10% or less than 10%, especially coming from Wall Street. I see that every day.
Exactly. And the truth is, just to add, you have to go on.
It's okay.
At that level, most of us are brilliant. We are capable, that's why we're there, right? But our brilliance is not what's going to take us to the next level. It's how you position yourself, how you influence others to take action. How do you influence your team to keep them engaged, right? And what you do with them to continue to retain them. We have to understand, if we want to stay at the C-suite level or get to the C-suite level, it cannot be based on performance. It's performance, but being very intentional and confident in what we bring to the table.
Exactly. Thank you, Sherlyn. Dr. Pamela, in the medical field, what leadership challenges have you faced and how have you navigated them?
So I was fortunate. My very first job as a nurse was in the coronary care unit, so a critical care unit, and we were on the night shift. And it was at a time when they fired all the LPNs. So the hospital was stuck with brand new nurses, which we got fantastic training. I had a very strong female nurse manager who would jump in the hole with us. But she warned us that if we didn't know everything 100%, and our assessment skills were not 100%, and a patient's heart attack extended and we didn't catch that murmur, that death was on us. and that lived with me. So I was very good about knowing all the medications, all the codes, things like that. So now, after being on the night shift for a while, I got tired of it, and I changed from a teaching hospital to a non-teaching hospital, which was a disaster. This hospital went back 50 years. I was shocked when the physicians walked in the room that the nurses didn't genuflect. That's how bad it was. They would take the orders without any question whatsoever, whether it was a good order or a bad order, and that's not how I was trained. And that thought of a patient dying was so strong in me that I nearly got fired after my 3rd week there, because I had to get in touch with the vice president of patient care, because a surgeon was mismanaging a patient to the point where the patient was going to die. And so after getting reamed out by the vice president for bothering her, I explained the situation, and she came out and she had me write all the orders that were necessary to save this man's life, and made the surgeon sign the orders. So I had a really great experience from the very beginning. When I started there was no system. If somebody was coding, everybody had a different way of mixing the medications. Everybody's pulling out their calculator. I remember my jaw hit the floor, because at the teaching hospital, there was a guideline for every single thing. So there were leaders, but they were bosses. They weren't influencers. They weren't somebody who can explain why we all have to work together. And I can be a real pain in the ass when I want something done. My husband's right there, he'll agree with me. Like a pit bull. So I got everything changed. And then after that, I was fortunate enough to get a job in pharmaceuticals when my 10-year-old told me he'd never marry a nurse because he'd never see her. I pulled the sword out of my heart and got into the corporate world, and had an amazing manager for 9 full years, which is unbelievably rare in the pharmaceutical industry. He had such respect for women. He really, really made us feel like we could literally do anything. And so after being in pharmaceuticals for a while and my kids grew up, I went back to school to be a nurse practitioner. From there, I became a hospitalist, intensivist, made a lot of changes in the hospital as well. And then went back for my doctorate degree, did my dissertation on preventing the progression from prediabetes to diabetes, and opened my own practice. And when I did that, as I said earlier, it was very, very trying. There were a lot of changes that had to be made after taking insurance, having 3,000 patients, seeing 25 to 30 patients a day, and not being able to make ends meet, nearly losing my practice, because the insurance company, it's the only industry where you do the job and you might get paid for it. Constantly fighting the insurance companies. And then my practice was built on preventative medicine. My practice was built on, you're going to come see me and I'm going to help you get off your medications. And now I'm getting these nasty letters from Connecticut and from Blue Cross and Blue Shield that I was taking too many patients off their medications and I was not prescribing enough meds. I ripped them up in my Italian temper, and my husband said I should have framed them and put them in the waiting room, which I don't think that way. Mm-hmm. So it was a big thing for me to have to go from taking insurance to now not taking insurance. So I went concierge, and I revamped the entire office. So now my 10-year-old, who's now 29, was misdiagnosed with Lyme disease. So for 10 years, from 19 until 29, he suffered terribly, and eventually was told all his symptoms were in his head because they couldn't find any cause of all of his symptoms. And meanwhile, I'm researching, and I find one research article that has his exact symptoms in it, and it was in the Journal of Urology. And so I contacted the researcher who referred me to the International Lyme and Associated Disease Society, where I became a member and went away for training with Dr. Richard Horowitz, who's a Lyme specialist. And then from there, I opened up more of a Lyme practice specifically for like tick-borne diseases. But then what I found out was that a lot of people have that, but then they also have mold toxicity, and they have mycotoxins, and they have microplastics, and they have parasites. And these are things that the mainstream doctor knows nothing about. And in our society right now, if you could teach a monkey to read, they could become a doctor, because doctors don't think. There's no more thinking. There's no more researching and trying to figure out, well, I understand why I can't get this patient right. Am I using the wrong lab? Is there something better that I can? They don't do that anymore. If it's not a quick buck, it just doesn't get done. I'm so passionate about what I do. I try and help so many people to get better. And I just want to get to a point where what I do becomes mainstream. I want what I do to be mainstream, not guidelines. nobody fits perfectly in these guidelines. And I think that's a big problem. And as a woman, of course, that's more difficult for me, because if a man was sitting in this seat right now, he would get his point across differently. You would be hearing him in a different manner than you're hearing me. You know, I would be looked at as somebody who's bitchy, somebody who's, I don't know, ornery or something like that. Not somebody who's really business-wise and learned how to change her practice to keep the doors open and help more people. So I think that that's a real struggle for women in general, just being able to be smart and wise and have business sense.
No, definitely. Thanks, Dr. Pamela. And a couple of takeaways from that. A great manager makes the difference between inclusion and exclusion. I've seen it in my life as well. And also, like you said, listen to the patients, especially also when it comes to women's health. There is not a lot of research already done. Then how are you going to prescribe the right medication to assessing? Because the research has done on non-women physiologies, right? So thank you so much for that. So Dr. Esther, you come from a different perspective in the nonprofit space. So nonprofit is always considered as not-for-profit, as usual. So how do you balance financial stability with your purpose and impact with your nonprofit leadership?
So I've spent, going to date myself, I've spent several years working for the federal government as a CEO there, and of course, when I left that, I went into corporate America. I went into a nonprofit agency that's in 12 states, and I oversaw 2 of the states. And one of the things that I really learned is that a nonprofit agency can be profitable. However, it does take the board to be very involved, not in the day-to-day operations, but involved and be very active and be able to build community, be able to build and establish relationships with corporate leaders. It's also important, especially in the environment that we're living in today, where grants are going away, that nonprofit agencies must begin to look at innovative ways that they can increase their funding stream or really sustain it, or just basically sustainability in their funding stream. So it's very important that if you are a CEO of a nonprofit, then begin to look outside of the box. Look at cause marketing. Begin to look at other funding streams that can bring in not just fundraising, which is also very important, not just grant writing, which is also important, but just other ways. There's so many things that's out there right now that's very important that you could bring in that additional funding stream to what? To do what? To up-level your business. You could offer fee for services. One of the most important things is that you must ensure that whatever you're doing, whether it's a grant, whether it's fundraising, whether it's cause marketing, whether it's looking at other ventures that you can go into, it has to go into the purpose. What is your mission? What is the core value of the organization? Right? And then everything that you do must make sure that it's promoting that. And anything that's outside of that. Now, the reason I say that is because it has gotten at one point to where many nonprofit agencies would begin to look at other funding streams, although it didn't have anything to do with their mission and vision. Yeah. And that absolutely does not work. It has to go into your mission and vision because the community is watching and you want to ensure that you have an effect. Philanthropists are looking. And when you're supporting your vision and your mission, and you're really making an impact in the community that you're serving, then you'll attract other philanthropists, you'll attract corporations, private donors to coming, and all of that is really important as we're looking at how we're going to sustain your nonprofit agency or your organization. Here's the other piece, then everyone has to buy into exactly what you're doing. So it's not just about you as the leader, because depending on the level of your nonprofit agency, we're talking about women, it's less than 25%, I believe exactly it's 22%.
I think it's coming down.
Yeah, of women who are leaders of nonprofit agencies. And by the way, those leaders are normally, if they're women, they're normally the smaller nonprofit agency. If you're a larger million, let's say $10 million plus, then they're looking at a man. So then, ladies, women, what can we do to show that we have the ability that no matter what funding level your agency is at, that we can operate that 2, that 3 million, or we can operate that 10, that 15, that 20 million nonprofit agency and bring innovative funding streams in to really sustain and increase, level up, let's say, our profit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, like you mentioned, it's all about the people. So stay in your lane, focus on the people you're trying to serve for. But since I come from the venture capital space, also a very related example
Very
is
much so. Venture capital, very much.
Very much. So women inherently do comprehensive due diligence regardless, and that always helps balance the risk to the amount of funding that you go for. Be it
Agreed.
non-profit or venture capital or corporate leadership, doesn't matter.
And the
that's a
board is
plus.
important, right? Your board. I serve on a nonprofit board. I've been on 2, and it's been over 20 years. And your board activity is important, right?
Yeah.
What the board is doing and what value are they bringing to the table that can really lift up that organization and take that organization to the next level in the day and the times that we're living in right now.
Exactly.
And just to add to what Dr. Cheryl is saying, because you asked what can be done. And this is where we, as women leaders, we need to make the shift in our mindset from just being a leader to a leader who wants to leave a legacy. And what does that look like? Clearly, you have years of industry experience within the nonprofit, right? And through your work, I hope others are being inspired. So what you can do, what you're doing, and what they could do, all of that industry experience that you have, mentor them. Mentor them, because that's how they're gonna learn. And I'm not talking about what can be learned on Google University. I'm talking about those secrets, those successes, those failures that you've acquired over the years. Teach them. And this is a lesson to everybody here in the audience and everybody who's watching online. That's how we're going to shorten their success curve. That's how we're gonna have more representation, right? And within your niche, you could decide, what? Well, I'm saying you, but somebody else. I want to focus on women who really want to build nonprofit organizations, who want to become CEOs to the larger nonprofit organizations. What do I need to know? And that's where legacy comes in, because ideally, that's what's going to outlive us.
Yeah, no, definitely. Legacy matters for the next generation.
Yes.
Dr. Cheryl, so what key strategies should women in business use to scale successfully, coming from a different physician's perspective?
So basically what happens with the physician world, right? Our practice. So for example, let me take my practice. So when I have nurses, who work, as Dr. Pamela said, childcare, basically, that's what it happens. Women's biological clock and the career clock, I would emphasize this, both go not in the same direction, okay? If you look at it, they
are running at the same time.
Yeah, they're running at the same time, but we are not able to catch up with both. So what happens is, in this case, we as women leaders, especially in my organization, what we implemented was the days that they had to work extra hours and things, we would provide childcare. Our organization included childcare, so they can till their partner steps in to take the child home. So that is one thing that we did in our organization. That's what I'm saying. Invest in your people. That's basically invest in your people. They'll tend to stay longer with you. So that's what I think is a good example. The other thing is, what we do is we introduce KPIs, key performance indicators. So I personally believe what cannot be measured doesn't get done.
100%.
Yeah, so that was one thing that I always pushed in. We have to have a measurable goal. Initially, I also went by the gut feeling, as all leaders do, when you start up a startup. But then I understood, no, if you have KPIs, the results are better.
Yeah.
So those are two strategies that we use right now.
Thank you, Dr. Cheryl. And I think it's applicable to any industry. If you don't measure, you don't know where to pivot, when to improve, or when to even focus more on a specific initiative. Thank you for that. And Jasmine, from your perspective, how can women-led brands create lasting impact in competitive industries? Like you said, you are representing for the first time in a different industry, but it's not a new industry. So what do you think we can do?
Over the years, I've learned that showing my face, being present, is very essential storytelling. Being transparent, being engaging with the customer, very important. There are a lot of brands that don't have a face to it, and I made sure that I was that face. Again, like I said earlier, when you go into a store, you do not see someone like me on a product that like what I have. But now that I've created that, even though it's uncomfortable because I don't want to be the face, but I am the person who has the same problem as my customer, I have to make sure that I get the point across. I'm here with you, I am speaking with you, I'm making sure I give you that advice, educate you on the situation that you're dealing with, whether that is on a trying to break down the hormonal issues that you have and how to take care of it. So it's like I said, you just have to be very engaged with your audience. And I think that is what keeps a long-lasting, successful relationship, having a business, especially if you're solving a problem. So I think that's what I have as far as I got.
Thanks, Jasmine. I think that's the same theme we heard everywhere. Listen to your customer,
Yes.
or patient, or audience, or people, or your mission. Regardless, that matters. And I just want to quickly talk about the generational wealth transfer that's also happening now. So in about a decade or so, $84 to $85 trillion will be passed over from the boomer generation to Gen X and millennial generation. And more than 60% of that would be going to women. So what can we expect and hope in the short term is by default, there will be empathy-driven leadership. It's not going to be, okay, so we have to teach emotional intelligence to the leaders. It's going to be a default. We already spoke about, by default, comprehensive due diligence and risk management. So you're definitely going to see ROI plus a balance with inclusion, impact, and sustainability. So with this new transition that's about to come, what can we leave as takeaways for our next generation? Because this is going to be the upcoming generation. We have to be role models, but also build systems that help enable them to be more empathetic and inclusive in their organizational leadership. So I'll probably start with Shermlin. In your industry, what do you think you want other women leaders to take away? Or even our audience who are diverse today?
I would love my women leaders to move from being invisible high achievers, right? Invisible high achievers to influential leaders. And I'm going to clarify, when I'm speaking about an influential leader, I'm not speaking about necessarily an influencer. There's a difference. A leader who has the ability to drive change, drive impact within the organization that she leads, the community she's a part of, and the industry she's a part of, the industry as well. And if she chooses to do it globally as well. Why? Because we could learn something from our male counterparts. Before coming on this panel, I read something on LinkedIn saying that only 60% of us apply for jobs that we think we have 100% of the skills for.
Yeah, unless you meet 100%,
Exactly.
you're not applying.
But our male counterparts will apply for the roles.
Yeah.
Right? So you understand why, in addition to the fact that I know there are other factors that contribute towards the fact that, you know, there aren't as many women in leadership compared to our male counterparts, but it starts with us. So what is your unique strength? I know that we are great at a lot of things, but what it is that you know that you could do to the best of your ability, that you could influence people. So I'll give you an example. Growing up, I was always told that I was talkative. You know, I was always told that I was talkative. And sometimes if you're from the Caribbean, your parents want you to be attentive, always very academically strong and so on. But I now understand, through speaking, that's how I influence others. That's how I influence my teams. That's how I influence stakeholders. But through my 15-year marketing career, I understand how to customize my messaging to drive that influence, and that's where experience comes in. So stop being a best-kept secret. We're gonna spend 99,000 hours in a lifetime at work, continue to be amazing leaders, but add meaning and purpose into what you do, and pull up another sister with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shimlin. Dr. Pamela, what would be your takeaway for women in your industry, or a key takeaway for our audience here today?
So the vast majority of nurses and nurse practitioners are women. There are a handful of men in the industry, and I honestly was hoping the more men got into nursing, it would help us to move forward with a lot of the things that we struggle with, and that did not happen. I have colleagues that are very strong women, but I don't know if that's something that you grow into or it's something you're taught, because the vast majority, I don't think they have the confidence to open up their own practice or to be business owners or get themselves in a position where they're leading an organization. And that's really unfortunate. And I mean, everything goes back to your childhood.
Yeah.
For me, my mother brought me up that if anybody else can do it, I could do it. When I opened my practice and realized nobody else did it, that was an extremely wonderful experience for me, because I always, like I said, felt that if somebody else could do it, I could do it. This was the first time that, again, it didn't happen on purpose, but I did become the first to do something, and I was able to encourage other nurse practitioners to open their own practice. I can, if I find the right person, I can assist them in helping them to go back to school, become a nurse. Nursing is one profession where you can start with an associate's degree and you can go all the way up to your doctorate degree. Whether it's a PhD in research or a DNP in practice, it's no matter what you do in the profession, you're going to be personally satisfied and professionally challenged.
No, definitely, I can relate to it. I mean, I think many of us here have been the first or only or only woman of color or only person in the room many times for many years, so definitely relatable. Thank you for that. Dr. Esther, what's your key takeaway for women in your industry or for our audience today?
Self-care. The reason I say that is because, really from being moving from corporate America to now owning my own companies and working really hard. I mean, they're very successful companies, and I'm so blessed to have them. But what I learned over the years is self-care is important, because I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I went back to school. I got my PhD, not one, but two. And I've did all of these different things. I've started businesses from the ground up. I am an advocate for those who can't serve themselves. And so there's so many things. But one thing that I found that I did not do was not do very good self-care at one point in my life. And so I began to really focus on that, because if I don't serve myself first, then there's no way I could serve anyone else. So I have to make sure that I serve myself, that I take care of my mental well-being, that I embrace, just as many of you embrace your inner strength and vulnerability all at the same time, so you can be the leader that you have been created to be. You have the knowledge, the skills, and the ability. And so now you've just got to put everything together. The inner work is very important, and the outer work is important. And so I love what everyone here is saying, because it's all so true that branding is important. You know, hydration, I'm there because I do it. You know, I'm an educator. I have early childhood centers. I'm that person that says, no, as a profession, we just built a new hospital where we are. They need to have a place where their children are safe. And of course, with what you're doing, it's so phenomenal, right? That's what we need as women, and that's what, as leaders, we have to bring everything together. And here it is. We have to rise together and support each other. So that's
right.
the key, all of the takeaways.
Definitely, collaboration is key. Thanks, Dr. Esther. Cheryl, how about you?
So I would narrow it down to 4 C's that I always practice. It's called collaboration. That is
okay.
Seek a mentor, be a be a mentee, be a mentor. You're always learning. Yeah. The next C is continuous learning. You keep learning continuous. That's the next C I would go with. The other C would be change is constant.
Yeah.
So you need to self-regulate yourself and self-awareness for the change. Get comfortable with the change that is going through. And the third thing, choose your partner. Choose your partner. It takes a long way because with women, especially with women, we have that, there's gender expected roles, our communication. If we talk, if they say it is, aggressive. But when men talk, it's assertive. Yeah. So what I feel is, choose your partner who will be, the spouse gets hit worst with women. My husband would vouch for that. Yeah. The spouse is the person who hurts the most.
Yeah.
Especially with women leaders, because that's not expected from us, right? So choose your partner who'll encourage you, who'll enable you, stand with you. That's what it is.
Thank you, Cheryl. How about you, Jasmine?
I think, now this is kind of going off of your comment, Dr. Esther. And self-care is very important, yes. But I will say, comfort does not equal growth. It doesn't. Like, you're going to have, if you want to be a leader, entrepreneur, it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of sacrifices. There's going to be a lot of long nights, early mornings, no sleep, sacrificing time with your kids and stuff like that. I'm going through that, or I was going through that a lot more earlier in my day. But when it comes down to it, it is well worth it because you have to remember that everything is temporary. But in the most part, yes, comfort does not equal growth. Another thing I want to add is just if you have an idea or you have the drive, just make sure or try to make sure that you want it enough, because there are a lot of people who start something and don't try to finish it. Like, they just start it and they're like, this is too much, and give up. So if you want it, make sure that you want it enough before you start wasting time.
All right. Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, definitely growth happens outside the comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So since we have like 5 more minutes, I'll just quickly wrap up with key takeaways from our panel today. And if there are any questions, you can always talk to us after we step down. I think the first thing we heard was find a mentor, but more importantly also find a sponsor. A mentor definitely can mentor you. You can be a mentee, but a sponsor vouches for you, fights for you in rooms where you're not there, where decisions are being made about your career, your life. The second thing we heard today was definitely give a chance. If you are in positions of power or decision making, if you are not willing to hear big ideas from other women, then you are failing as a leader because you are missing out on a great idea yourself. The third thing we heard from our panel today also is challenge traditions or think outside the box. Just because something has not been done in a certain way doesn't mean you have to, do that or don't do that. But if it makes sense to be more inclusive and empathetic and also bring other women leaders along with you and build a system that's going to accommodate the next generation, please do so. And then if there are things that you can advocate in terms of policy changes or helping the next generation, definitely take a small step from your side. Last but not the least, but I just want to share women today, especially women of color, are underpaid, underrepresented in leadership, and underfunded all at the same time. And the trend has not changed. Actual data has not changed, even after the pandemic in the last 5 years. So the urgency is more now than trying to say, okay, it's something we can wait for another 5 years. So thank you so much for taking time to listen to us and our panelists. Thank you.
Can I just add that when you say that we're underrepresented, that's why it's important for all of us to use our voice and embrace our brilliance.
Exactly.
You know, and just really get out there and just don't take it because that's what they've said. Use your voice because you have something to say and the world needs to hear it.
Usually women do that. They have good ideas, but the self-doubt is so high. So they'll rather quietly say it to you than be assertive in a board meeting. You know, they won't push their communication. That's where it happens.
And I'm going to say that we still have, when we hear the term, use your voice or authenticity, some people take it for granted and as an excuse to just say what they want. So I'm going to add, in using your voice, you have to understand who your target audience is and be very strategic and intentional with what you want to see to drive that emotion, because your end game is action. So you can't use your voice and it doesn't resonate with what you want. So what is your end goal? But I'm going to use my voice to say the things that needs to be said, in the tone that needs to be said, to drive the emotion that I want to come out so I could get the desired outcome. So that's important in using your voice.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.